Median artery. Evolution didn't stop with your ancestors. Right now, a brand new body part is showing up in more people every year. And there's a real chance it's already inside your arm. It's called the median artery, a third blood vessel running down your forearm. A century ago, only about 1 in 10 people still had it as an adult. Today, it's closer to 1 in 3, and it's rising so fast that if it keeps pace, most humans will be born with it by the year 2100. Your arm is a newer model than the one your great-grandparents had. The reason traces back to before you were born. While you were growing in the womb, that median artery fed your developing hand, then withered away before birth, once the radial and ulnar arteries, the two you're supposed to keep, took over the job. But in more and more people, it never withers. It stays a full working vessel, because the genes that are supposed to shut it down never fire. Your body keeps it because it pays off. A third artery means more blood reaching your hand, plus a built-in spare if one of the other two ever gets damaged. Nothing's weeding it out, and there's a real reason for it to exist, so each generation holds onto it a little more often than the last. Myopia. Most young people today can't read a far-off sign without glasses. 100 years ago, almost all of them could. Same eyes, same species, completely different vision. Myopia, the proper name for nearsightedness, happens when the eyeball grows a little too long from front to back. Light from far away then lands just short of the retina, the screen at the back of your eye, so distant things blur while close ones stay sharp. A century ago, this was uncommon, but in parts of East Asia now, more than 8 in 10 young adults have it, and the rest of the world's climbing the same curve. Your genes didn't rewrite themselves in 3 generations. The trigger is how you spend your childhood. Growing eyes need plenty of bright outdoor light to settle into the right shape. Swap that for years of close-up time on books and screens under dim indoor lighting, and the eye keeps stretching past where it should stop. The result is a generation whose vision was shaped by the rooms they grew up in. Your eyeball is, in a real sense, a record of how much sunlight you got before you turned 12. Body temperature. There's a number you've trusted your whole life to tell you when something's wrong. It's printed on every thermometer, taught in every school, and it's been wrong for over a century. That number is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, or 37 degrees Celsius, and it came from a single German doctor taking armpit readings back in 1851. Modern studies put the true average closer to 97.9, and human body temperature has been drifting down ever since records began. The leading explanation has nothing to do with thermometers getting better. People in the 1800s lived with near-constant low-grade infection, untreated teeth, slow-healing wounds, illnesses that lingered for months. Fighting all of that kept the body warmer at rest. Today, with cleaner water, dentistry, and antibiotics, your immune system isn't stoking a fire around the clock, so your baseline runs cooler. The 98.6 everyone still quotes isn't your normal. It's the normal of a sicker century that never quite left the textbooks. Muscles and tendons. Press the back of your hand to a table and pinch your thumb to your pinky. If a cord pops up in your wrist, you're carrying a muscle the human race is slowly deleting. If it doesn't, you might already be the newer version. That cord belongs to the palmaris longus, a thin muscle running from your elbow to your wrist. It earned its keep back when ancestors needed extra help flexing the wrist and gripping branches. For you, it does almost nothing. Surgeons think so little of it that they harvest it for repairs elsewhere in the body, and you never miss it. Around 1 in 7 people are now born without it on at least one arm. Your leg is losing a muscle too. Down in your calf sits the plantaris, a slim muscle that once helped primates grab and handle things with their feet. Roughly 1 in 10 people don't have it anymore. Both are doing the same thing at the same time, thinning out of the species because nobody's survival depends on them anymore. Evolution isn't only about adding upgrades. Sometimes it's about losing a part you stopped needing, the same way new cars quit coming with a CD player and not one person called to complain. Height. For about 150 years, humans kept getting taller generation after generation, almost like clockwork. Then, in some of the richest countries on Earth, it stopped cold. A few are even sliding backward. Height seems like it should be locked in by your genes, and the ceiling is, but you only reach that ceiling if your childhood feeds it. Steady food, clean water, and fewer illnesses during the growing years let kids hit their full potential. And as those things spread over the last century and a half, average height shot up by as much as 4 inches in many places. The Dutch are the poster child, going from one of Europe's shortest peoples to its tallest in a few generations. Same goes for you. Odds are you've got a couple inches on your great-grandfather, and his bloodline isn't the only reason. So why did it stop? In rich countries, kids now grow up with about the best food and care they can get. They've already hit the ceiling their genes set, and no amount of extra food pushes a body past that. Where height is actually dropping, the blame falls on junk-heavy diets and a growing gap between well-fed kids and struggling ones, which pulls the average down. Stack it all up, and your full-grown height isn't really a verdict from your DNA. It's more like a report card on the childhood you got. Jaws and wisdom teeth. Almost everyone you know has a wisdom teeth horror story. Your great-great-grandparents mostly didn't. Their mouths had room to spare, and yours is running out of it for a specific reason. That reason is sitting on your plate. Human jaws have been shrinking for thousands of years, and the change sped up once cooking and processing made food soft. A jaw grows in response to use, like the rest of the body. Chew tough, fibrous food all through childhood, and the jaw develops long and wide. Grow up on smoothies, bread, and tender cooked meals, and it comes in shorter. The teeth, though, didn't shrink to match. They still come in full size, so when your third molars at the very back try to surface, there's no room left for them. That's the horror story. They wedge sideways, jam against the molar in front, or get stuck under the gum, until a dentist goes in and pulls them out. But here's where the body is starting to catch up. More and more people are born without some or all of their wisdom teeth, because evolution is adapting to the very problem evolution caused. The shrinking jaw came first, and now the species is slowly dropping the teeth that no longer fit it. You might already be one of the lucky ones whose body skipped them, born a little further down the evolutionary line than the people still booking oral surgery. Puberty. A 12-year-old today is, biologically, standing about where a 15-year-old stood not that long ago. Childhood itself is getting shorter, and it's been speeding up for over a century. Look at when kids start puberty, and the trend is hard to miss. 150 years ago, the average girl reached her first period around age 16 or 17. Now it's closer to 12, and the starting line for puberty keeps inching earlier for boys and girls alike. This isn't entirely your genes' fault. It's your body responding to food. Puberty is expensive, so the body waits to start it until it's sure there's enough fuel on hand to grow up and, down the line, have kids of its own. It measures that fuel through body fat. Once a kid carries enough, the fat releases a hormone called leptin that signals the brain it's safe to begin. Better-fed, heavier kids reach that fat level sooner, so as food got plentiful over the last century, the whole timeline slid earlier. Feed a child well enough, and the body can't wait to grow up, whether the parents are ready for the attitude and grocery bills or not. Sickle cell. In the parts of the world hit hardest by malaria, a single gene has been spreading through the population for thousands of years because it keeps people alive. It's the sickle cell gene, and it reshapes your red blood cells, the discs that carry oxygen through your body. Inherit one copy from one parent, and your blood turns deadly to the malaria parasite, the killer that spreads through mosquito bites and takes hundreds of thousands of lives a year. That one copy is a lifesaver. Live in malaria country and carry it, you survive, grow up, and have kids who carry it too. With each generation, it spreads a little further throughout the population. That's evolution at work. Not a new gene appearing, but a protective one becoming more and more common because the people who carry it live and pass it on. But there's a brutal side to it too. Inherit two copies, one from each parent, and you don't get protection. You get sickle cell disease, a painful, lifelong, sometimes deadly condition. Now here's the other half of evolution most people don't know about. Take that same gene to a place where malaria is gone, and it has no one left to protect. In those populations, evolution's doing the opposite of what it's doing in malaria country. It's erasing the gene. Generation by generation, fewer kids are born with it, because away from malaria, the gene only costs them and never pays off. Evolution's building the gene up where it saves lives, and weeding it out where it only does harm. Grip strength. We're taller than past generations and we live longer, but our hands keep getting weaker. Your grandfather, at your age, probably had a stronger handshake than you do now. Researchers measure this with a simple device you squeeze as hard as you can. And when you compare today's young men to men the same age a few decades back, grip strength has dropped by a meaningful margin. That sounds minor until you learn what grip strength really tells you. It lines up closely with your whole body strength and ranks among the better predictors of how well you'll age. The weakening comes down to the kind of life most of us now lead. Earlier generations spent their days hauling, twisting, building, and fixing, putting constant demand on their hands and forearms. Trade that for keyboards, touchscreens, and a day where the hardest thing your hands lift is a laptop, and they never get the workload that builds them. You're looking at a body perfectly adapted to its environment. That environment just happens to almost never ask your hands to be strong. Testosterone and sperm counts. Compared to a man the same age one generation back, the average man today measures lower on two things at once. Both are sliding a little further every year, and one of them decides whether the human race keeps going. The first is testosterone, the main male hormone. Study after study finds a man today carries less of it than a man of the same age and health did a few decades ago, even after accounting for things like weight. The second is sperm count, and that drop is more severe. Across much of the Western world, the average count has fallen by roughly half in about 50 years. Two separate measures, the same downward slope across the same stretch of time. Both trace back to a handful of usual suspects: sitting all day, carrying more body weight, and a flood of man-made chemicals in food packaging and other plastics that can interfere with how the body handles its hormones. It's the same soft, low-movement life that's weakened grip strength, showing up here in a man's blood work instead. Whatever's driving it, the trend is real, it's current, and it touches the one system the species can least afford to watch fade away. Fabella bone. Behind your knee, a tiny bone that almost disappeared from humans is fighting its way back. A century ago, hardly anyone had it. Now, it's in nearly half of us, and that number keeps rising. It's called the fabella, about the size of a sesame seed, tucked inside a tendon at the back of the knee joint. Our distant ancestors had it, most humans lost it, and then it started returning. In 1918, roughly 11% of people had a fabella. By 2018, that figure jumped to about 39%. The best explanation circles back to something already covered. We're taller and heavier than we used to be, thanks to a century of better food. Bigger bodies push more force through the knee, and bone tends to grow where it's loaded. That extra strain seems to coax the fabella into forming where it otherwise wouldn't. While certain muscles thin out of the species, this little bone runs the opposite way, showing up in more knees every decade. Gut microbiome. Trillions of tiny living things call your gut home, and they're almost as much a part of you as your own cells. Right now, they're going extinct inside you, one kind at a time. This collection of bacteria living in your intestines is called the microbiome. A healthy one is crowded with many different species, all pulling their weight, breaking down fiber, making vitamins, and keeping troublemaker microbes boxed in. The modern gut is losing that variety fast. Compare people eating traditional high-fiber diets to people living on processed low-fiber food, and the processed group carries a noticeably thinner cast of bacteria. Two things are driving that loss: diets stripped of the rough plant fiber those bacteria feed on, and rounds of antibiotics that wipe out whole populations and don't always let them grow back. Within just a few generations, the inner ecosystem humans carried for ages has shrunk. You're not only the body you can see, you're also a habitat, and the residents are disappearing, which sets up a real problem for the system that was counting on them. Allergies and autoimmune conditions. Now that those tiny tenants are vanishing, your body's defense system is growing up with far less to train against. A system that never learned what's harmless starts swinging at everything: pollen, food, sometimes your own body. This picks up right where the microbiome left off. Your immune system, the body's network for spotting and fighting threats, isn't born knowing what's dangerous. It learns, mostly in early childhood, by meeting a wide range of microbes and sorting the harmful from the harmless. The bacteria thinning out of the modern gut were a big part of that classroom. Strip away much of the exposure: cleaner homes, fewer siblings, less time in the dirt, a thinner microbiome, and the immune system grows up undertrained. An undertrained immune system tends to overreact. It misreads pollen, peanuts, and dust as enemies and launches a full attack. That's an allergy. Sometimes it turns the weapons on the body's own tissue. That's an autoimmune condition. Both have been rising fast in places where modern life is cleanest. The same comfort that lengthened your life and fed you well also raised an immune system that never got its full education. None of this is finished. Evolution's still happening right now, in your body and everyone else's. You're not the final draft of anything. You're just the most recent one.